The contracting officer wants everything signed like today. It's from today until next year with the option to extend for 2 years. The subcontractor's charging $50 per grass mowing, and I put in there $60. And so I just added 15% on top, and that's what I submitted. And honestly, kind of looked like a school project, the proposal in Canva, but it worked because it won. I still work a full-time job. I work in the operating room. I love artificial intelligence. After I feed it that question, it usually gives me all that information in less than a minute.
I have Ayana with me today, who recently won a contract, and she's going to tell us all about it. Welcome to the channel.
Thank you.
How did you get into government contracting?
So I actually found out about government contracting through this boot camp. It was called the Entrepreneurship Boot Camp for Veterans, and it's through Texas A&M University. So it's kind of called IVMF, and it's for veterans who obviously have previously served. And it's they call it getting an MBA in 7 or 8 days. And there was an individual there who was talking to us. It was a speaker, and she was talking to us about how she got into government contracting, and it's been very good for her. So the boot camp doesn't not only talk about government contracting, but it talks about how to own a business, run a business, pretty much everything from A to Z. And so when I went there, I originally run a co-hosting for midterm rentals, and that's what I went there with my business idea to this boot camp. But when I found out about government contracting, I'm like, oh, I kind of like this. This sounds like this could be good. So I kind of hit the ground running. After I came back from the boot camp, I opened my new LLC for the government contracting. I went on vacation, so there was a month of nothing really going on. But as soon as I got back, I started watching a ton of YouTube videos. I read a bunch of books, and then I took 1 or 2 courses. And I ended up taking Wes Fisher's his 5-day challenge, and then I started immediately looking at state and local contracts while I was waiting to get my cage code, because when I first submitted for federal, I made the big faux pas where it was an address that you can use. It wasn't a post office box, but it was one of those virtual addresses, and it didn't match. And so they blocked me on the federal. They're you can't do that. So it delayed me. And I'm well, I still don't want to just sit here and not do anything. So I'm still going to apply for state and local because I know you don't need a cage code for that. So I started looking for pretty much anything. I threw the blanket wide across the U.S. and I ended up finding a grass cutting contract in Iowa. And I read through the requirements. It wasn't a lot. And I'm okay, this definitely seems like something that I could do. So I submitted the proposal. It was due by March 1st. So I think I had maybe a week to throw it together. And so I just called the subcontractors, landscapers that were in the city, asking if this is something they could do, and they quoted me. And so I literally went into Canva, and I did have a form or a piece of paper where they could write their references, but I also went to the landscaper's website and I screenshot their reviews, and I also put that in my proposal. And honestly, kind of looked like a school project, the proposal in Canva, but it worked because it won. So I threw it together. I had to mail it in actually. So I rushed to the UPS, and I had to do 3-day service because it was so close to the date, and I wanted to make sure that it made it on time. So yeah.
So this is amazing. So I have a lot of questions. One, why did you create a new business, and why didn't you register your existing business in SAM?
Because it was unrelated. So my existing business is for real estate purposes. And so I wanted to create a new one for government contracting. That way I would be listed under consulting. That way I'm not pigeonholed into one particular industry.
Okay. I was just curious. And for this is awesome that you learn, applied, adjust. You're I'm not just going to sit back and wait for this cage code. You instead said, I'm going to bid on things. Do you live in Iowa?
I don't live in Iowa.
I don't either. And so that's what's amazing, that you were able to bid. So how was it finding the vendor?
The subcontractor? Mm-hmm. It was actually fairly easy. There's a few different places you can look to find. You can look on Facebook Marketplace, etc. But I feel the fastest and easiest way to find a subcontractor is just go to Google, and I look at the top people who have the most reviews, and I read through the reviews to make sure that they're good. And then I kind of just read to make sure that they can actually do what I am looking for, because I have had a few times where it looked like it was a landscaping company, but all they did was something else. Like it was like just unrelated to landscaping, which was interesting. So I just made sure that they were able to do it and do grass cutting specifically. And after I kind of went down the list, I was able to gather. Honestly, I only got like one quote because you can call a few subcontractors, like 2 or 3, and some people will say they'll get back to you with a quote, but sometimes you'll only get one back. And you might as well just submit. If you have one, you have something. So
I love that philosophy. And how long is this contract for?
So this is something else that popped up. So through the original contract, it said that it was from May 1st until November of this year with the option to extend for 2 years. I was like, okay. So I wrote the paperwork for my subcontractor for our teaming agreement with those specific dates. And now today, she actually sent me the contracting paperwork that I signed with her, and it has new dates on it. So always make sure that you read through the contract that your officer sends you because it's changed now. So now I have to change my paperwork with my sub. So now it's from today until next year with the option to extend for 2 years. So April 1st of this year to April 1st of next year. So I immediately called my sub and I'm like, hey, she changed the dates. Are you okay with this before I send you new paperwork? So
that's great that you stay in communication. And did they automatically adjust the pricing, or did Iowa come back to you and ask for new pricing?
No, he's totally fine. My subcontractor's fine.
No, not the sub. Not the sub, the state, because they changed the period. Did they ask you for revised pricing, or did they do the math on their own?
No, actually, she didn't ask for anything. She just sent me the paperwork and she didn't even let me know about the new dates. I just had to read through myself, and that's what I saw. I'm like, oh, okay. But in there is the original quoted price that I have. So that's what she's expecting to get.
So it still works, although the dates change.
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to make sure you were good on the money, because sometimes if the dates change, then maybe your rate goes up.
Yeah, it's still good.
That's really good. And so then the subcontractor is on board, and I'm assuming they're very excited.
Yeah, they're definitely excited at the idea of having consistent work, because I know he was telling me he was actually really great at staying in touch with me while I was waiting to get this insurance situation sorted out, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But he kept actually following up with me. He's honestly the best first subcontractor I could have ever talked to, because he's very understanding of this whole situation of me being kind of the in-between of the city. And he likes the idea of me being that person because he's so busy running his own business. He doesn't really have time to bid on contracts. So I even told him on the phone before, I'm like, this is the perfect relationship here, because I can find them, bid on them for you, and put together the paperwork. And then you just execute with your team. And he really liked that. So he's definitely been communicative with me about, hey, Anna, have you heard anything yet? As far as before we even won, he's like, I'm definitely ready to have my guys start working and keep them busy all summer. And I'm like, yeah, great.
And I love that, because that's a big thing that comes up. Why would the landscape company, why would the trainer want to be subbed out, be middleman? And this is the reason for it, because you're often in that position where you're executing that takes away from making the money to find opportunities, to bid on them, to win them, to do the paperwork. And I just think it's brilliant that you use Canva. How did you know? I mean, I get Canva, but how did you know how to best structure your proposal?
So from just different books that I read and then other sources online, I kind of put it together based on what I saw and other examples. But I find from state and local versus federal does usually tend to spell it out for you, and they tell you exactly how they want you to write it and include this. And state and local kind of don't really have that. This contract did kind of have it in there where they said, we just want you to include your pricing, past performance, a biography about your business. And so it was only maybe 5 things. And so there was some documents that they wanted included in the proposal. So I didn't do everything in Canva. I kind of made my cover page, and I put my business in partnership with this business, which was an example I saw from that challenge. And then from the paperwork, for example, they had their own reference form that they wanted me to fill out. So when I went to UPS, I printed out the forms that they wanted included in my little documents, and I just filled it out by hand. Oh, and I had it already set up specifically on what page number that was supposed to fall on. And yeah, that's all I did.
Which is great. And then if you are okay sharing, what was the contract award for 1 year?
I need to calculate the total of it, because it was more on a grass cutting basis. And so it ended up being the subcontractors charging $50 per grass mowing, and I put in there $60 per grass mowing, and then hourly they're $65 and hourly is $75, and that's what I submitted to the contracting officer. I didn't want to price super high out of the gate since this was my first contract, and so I wanted to stay competitive but also still make sure like my costs would be covered. And so I just added 15%, maybe like a little bit more on top of what, so I just did like 15% of $50 and I just rounded up to 60 and call it a day.
Which is, and I appreciate you sharing this because I want everyone watching to really take away, when it's contracts like this, they don't need grass cut every day. Even if this was Florida. And so it's based on the frequency, the duration, all of those kinds of things, and that impacts your bottom line. And so then it's great to have the win, and then there's the and then. And the and then is winning more because there's going to be ebbs and flow, especially in Iowa. I mean, there are times they have a lot of rain. I lived in Iowa once. There's times, I think we had an earthquake. I mean, Iowa weather is very intriguing. And so you want to make sure you're constantly bringing in work, as well as you can bid on city, county, you can bid on universities. So then no matter what, you're constantly covered because you have like 50 of these kind of contracts.
Yes, and I thought it was also cool because there was like another grass cutting contract that came out in the same exact city, just with a different contracting officer. So I'm like, oh, I'm just going to take the same exact paperwork I just submitted and I'll just submit it to this one. But we actually lost that one because all they wanted was just the hourly. And apparently, I don't know how this happened, but I guess just be really clear when you are submitting information to the contracting officer for them to call you. Because my subcontractor called me and he's like, yeah, actually, I got a call from that other contracting officer and they said that we lost the contract and somebody else wanted for $70 hourly. And so like, he didn't know how much I had submitted it for. I just did 75 because that's what we did on the other contract. So I was like, oh, that's sorry he called you, but so next time I'm just going to make sure, like, call me, to let me know about the contract, whether it's been awarded and stuff like that. So that's fine. I'm still happy we have this one. So.
Yeah, and it's part of the learning tag because you never want their contact information anywhere there, ever.
Yeah.
Never. Because you always want them to come to you because it's like with Amazon. If we have an issue with something we purchased with Amazon, it's easier to deal with Amazon instead of trying to hunt down the third-party reseller of some sock,
Yeah.
But what's cool too is that your sub was still cool. Your sub was like, I can't believe you're charging $70. Like, they were really cool. And so I think that's a testament to you because I can tell you're nice, you're outgoing, like you are in it, like you're going to easily build a 7-figure business. So I think this is all cool for you.
Thank you.
So talk to us about this insurance. Tell us about the insurance piece, because that always comes up. Like, what do we do with insurance? Do we get added to their insurance? Like, and especially with lawn maintenance kind of things, like tell us about that.
So originally, like, I wanted to wait to get insurance until I won a contract. And because, you don't want to be paying money for something that hasn't really delivered anything yet. And honestly, if I had to do this again, I would not wait because it's been very stressful trying to get everything together. Because a lot of people say that you can just use your subs insurance for this and that. But what I'm finding is a lot of times when I'm reading, you actually do have to have your own insurance to protect your business. And then you usually have to name like whatever the contract's for. Like mine, I had to name the city on mine. And then, so I had to figure out who had to be on my insurance, who had to be on my subs insurance. And, once the contract gets awarded, the officers kind of want to move quickly. And I didn't have anybody lined up for insurance yet. And so when she told me, I'm like, okay, great. Now I need to find insurance. So I was recommended somebody to call. I did. And like, they were not very good at staying in contact with me. And I felt like I wasted like an entire week just waiting to get a quote from them. Also, in this contract, there's like some weird specific thing that is only like from their city, an endorsement that they wanted on the insurance. And like a lot of the insurance people I talked to said they'd never heard of that and that might be difficult to get on. the insurance. And when I spoke to the contracting officer, she said, well, none of our previous clients have ever had an issue. And so I'm like, oh, this is being such a blocker right now. But then, I kind of collaborated with a friend of mine, and she recommended another insurance person for me. Or she actually ended up finding them for me because it's easier in this industry to find somebody who has the same goals as you. Like my friend, we're both trying, because she was also in that boot camp with me. And so like, I still work a full-time job. I work in the operating room, and it's hard for me to make these calls. And she's like, I'll try to make these calls for you for insurance. I'm like, thank you. So by the end of the day, she was able to find insurance. She's like, you know what, since you've been struggling, I'm going to get insurance for myself right now as well. And then I called the gentleman, and he was able to get me the insurance by like the next day. Now that endorsement was still a weird thing. And so when I talked to the officer again, she said, okay, well, since you're the prime, we can just waive that. You don't need it, but your sub still definitely needs it. I'm like, okay. So now my next learning curve here was I should have given the information about the insurance to my sub, like when we first got awarded. I waited because, like I said, I was still trying to figure my insurance out first. And so I'm like, well, if I can't get that endorsement, I don't want to just give it all to my sub and like, hey, figure it out. So that's also something I would have done differently, because now that's what we're waiting on, is to get their insurance. And like the contracting officer wants everything signed like today. Yeah, so hopefully we can figure out the endorsement, but I'm thinking by today or tomorrow, we should have everything squared away, and then they can get started cutting the grass.
No, that's good. And I appreciate you sharing this, because there are a lot of people out there that say like, oh, you can get added to people's insurance. Like, I mean, we've had different clauses or different requirements added to our existing insurance. As a sub, we had to fulfill like a general liability policy for a large prime. But as far as just like easily putting people on and off insurance, I mean, I would say, as you found out, that's really not the case. And then you have these weird things that pop up. And like, what would be cool is to get from that contracting officer, that point of contact, okay, great. You said other companies have done this. Could you give me the contact for these other companies? So then you can find out, is this a company in Iowa? Is it a company? Who are these companies that they're working with? Because sometimes that comes up where it's like, oh yeah, this is really common. We do this all the time in Iowa, or who knows? And so it's all around a cool learning, because these types of things come up all the time outside of landscaping, even with payroll and everything. But what's good is you didn't give up. You didn't say, oh no, we're not going to do this. This is too much. And you have a full-time job. So I doubly commend you for this.
Thank you. Yeah, I definitely think that it's a good idea when you first get awarded the contract to discuss with the contracting officer, be more specific about the insurance requirements, because I said I was trying to figure all this out on my own about, okay, does the sub need to be on my insurance as well as the city? And then, and like, what needs to be? Do I need to be on my sub's insurance? Because I didn't know. And so that was nice that she finally clarified. And she's like, okay, the city just needs to be on yours, and then you and the city have to be on theirs. I'm like, okay. So I'm curious to see how that's going to be on other contracts, if that's going to be the same or if it will be different for each contract. So we'll see about that.
No, it'll be good. And it's good that you have a friend who took the initiative to further help you, because it can be so tedious. There's so many different types of insurance companies out there, and it's intense. So I commend you for that. So what are you bidding on next? I mean, we bid on 2, and I believe this win was like your first submission win.
Yes, it was my first submission officially, because before that I had submitted, it was like a quote for trash cans. So I don't really consider that like wasn't a true proposal. So this was the first proposal I submitted. So that was really exciting. And then right now I actually still have another one out for, actually it's web design in Nova Scotia, which is interesting. I contacted a company in Nova Scotia who could do web design, and it's a really big project. Like this project's worth like $30,000 for web design. And to me, this is big for like, state, local level. So I should find out in like the next week or so if I won that. But again, I was really clear with the subcontractor that I found. I have like these emails drafted up, these templates already. So I use Monday as a CRM. And if you're doing this, I do recommend like having some organization. I know there's like, you can use Excel sheets if you can't afford to pay for anything right now, but I like Monday because I'm able to keep track of my emails to everybody inside the CRM, and it lets me know when they've opened them or not as well. But I also have email templates just to create less of like a mental exhaustion process, because you're always having to think of all these little things. I just want to make the process as fast as possible. So when I go to email people, I'm like, oh, I'll just, okay, I need to get a quote. I'm just going to select this template and just change the little details here. So I have a template in there about letting the sub know that I'm the one who's like going to be managing the contract, and like, are you okay being a subcontractor, and just like those kind of details. And she was really excited about that. She's like, I look forward to working with you. Like, this sounds great. And I was like, awesome. Like, I'm having a really good experience with this. So, and I have been keeping in touch with her, because like I hadn't heard anything for about 2 weeks, which is how long the first contract took to get awarded. So after the 2 weeks, I'm like, oh, I wonder how long this one's going to take. So again, I had another template that asks for a follow-up on the award for the web design one. And then they emailed me back the opposite and said, oh, we're busy. It'll be like, April 8th or so when we find out. So I let the sub know I'm just giving her an update, and she was still really excited about possibly winning. So
I think this is tremendous, because it shows the different areas you can go into. Like, it doesn't just have to be lawn maintenance, it doesn't have to be web design. And then when you say Nova Scotia, are you speaking of Canada?
Yes. Yep.
Are you in Canada?
No, I'm not in Canada.
I am not either. So how did you get tapped into an opportunity in Canada?
So I've been using the software. I love RFP delivery, because I like that it kind of compiles state, local, and federal contracts. And so I have a little bit of experience doing web design myself, but I wouldn't want to do it on that scale of the contract that I submitted for. But I'm like, well, when you're first getting into this industry, you kind of would like to go towards something that you know something about. Of course, landscaping, it's kind of basic knowledge, mowing a grass, but like I definitely have no desire to mow anyone's lawn. It's just a very simple thing to understand. But the web design one, I'm like, well, I've done a little bit myself before. Let me see if there's actually like web design contracts. And so I typed into RFP delivery, which they can send you like emails based on like saved preferences. But, on days when I just want to go in there and search myself, I just typed in web design, and the one for Nova Scotia came up, and then I was reading through, and it's for like a tour. It's like they have like a certain tour sites in Nova Scotia, and they wanted to completely like redesign the whole website. And so I did call 2 people for quotes. Oh, and this is actually, I'm glad you asked about this. This is interesting. So So I had called 2 different people to get quotes, and the first one I had to do they had more questions, so I had to do an interview with them. And they got back to me maybe like a day or 2 later, and they're like, thanks for the call, Ayana, but we actually were contacted directly by that company to provide a quote. And I'm like, that's interesting. Like, I don't know. I feel like they probably weren't. Like, I feel like maybe after we did our interview, they probably went and searched it out themselves. So I lost out on that stuff, which is fine. So honestly, I probably submitted in like competition with them, which is fine, because this will happen in state and local, because there's no barrier to entry there versus like federal with the cage code and everything like that. So that will happen, where sometimes you'll just get subs that undermine you. And that actually segues into like another one I submitted for I was trying to get a quote for tree cutting at a runway in like one of the southern states. I think it was maybe like Georgia or something. And I called, and the like runway manager was like, yeah, I'm here right now if you want to send somebody to do a quote. I'm like, okay, great. So then I called back the sub that I contacted, and I'm like, hey, if you want to go over there right now, you can check out the area. Now, this is kind of like a sticky area, because I try to avoid contracts where it requires the site bid, because I can't be there. And of course, people can go around you. And that's exactly what happened. So he went out there, and I didn't hear back from the contractors. So then the next day I called, and I was like, hey, were you able to get a quote? He's like, oh yeah, I ended up passing it off to my father, and I think they're going to work something out. I'm like, okay, cool. So I'm like, yeah, that's fine. They're going to work something out. Good for them. They'll get their work. But, so I just move on to the next one. But yeah, I've had a lot of learning in like the past month.
Right. You got the learning tax. And like you said, with state and local, the barrier to entry is really easy and it's really low. So therefore they can do that, because on the federal government side, you can easily log into SAM, you go into the workspace and you look into the entity search, and you can see if a company has a cage code. But at state and local, sometimes you can register to be a vendor right as you're submitting the proposal. It's very, very easy. So I look at it like they're a blessing. These are blessings that you have given to people, and you will receive the blessings back. Because I have an abundant mindset. Back in the day, I didn't. Had such a scarcity mindset. So I see it as just as abundance, because that may happen for you. Somebody presents something to you and it falls into your lap. So it's great that you also brush it off. Some people take these experiences and they get very bitter, or they use it to justify why they don't want to do this. So I commend you for taking that higher road.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's definitely what was my thought process, especially with the tree cutting one. I was like, you know what? That's good. They have business, and there's enough for everybody out there. There's a
ton.
There's enough. Yeah.
And I love that you mentioned RFP delivery, and nobody here is being sponsored by them. I'm going to check it out. There's a couple sites I like to use, and I always love to learn about more. I have another question though. I'm like dying to know this. What did you have to do in order to submit in Canada? Was there any additional paperwork, any place you had to register?
I don't think so. I don't remember having to register for anything. I think it was just the same thing where I went to their little local website for the city, and that was an easy email delivery. So I just submitted something really simple. I think it was also in Canva again. And there was definitely a lot more pages involved as far as the quoting, because like with web design, there's like lots of phases you have to go in and stuff like that. So that one was a little bit more involved. But again, to keep it simple for myself, I just tacked on like 15% on top of whatever the full quote was. And then that's what I submitted. So, but I like that one because that was just a simple email delivery, like not even through any type of system. So yeah, it was really nice.
And I love that. And I asked because sometimes we're just focused on what we know, maybe our state or the United States or a certain region, and you can see that you can easily bid on work in Canada. I know I had a woman reach out to me about work in Jamaica. So you don't have to limit this to the United States. You can bid all over the world.
Yeah, there was actually a really cool contract that I wanted to bid on, but I guess they were already contacted by the individual officials. But it was like ice delivery in Barbados. Super simple. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's really easy. And then literally like the distance from the ice place to like the delivery point was like less than 10 minutes, but I guess they had already been talking, and so I'm like, okay, that's fine. But I'm definitely gonna look out for more contracts like that. For me, I don't want to bite off more than I can chew when you're first starting out, which is why I picked like lower, like local and state, and then also simple contracts that also don't have a lot of requirements, because like I've read and like heard before on various YouTube channels as well, when you're looking at these proposals, and if you see like a ton of attachments, like there could be like a lot of involvement, a lot of things you have to do. And like, I'll still click through it really quickly just to see if maybe this is just something additional that they just want you to have. But generally, I'll pick the ones that have maybe 1 to 2 to 3 attachments, and it doesn't require a lot of things. And I think those are good for maybe your first 1 or 2 that you submit on. That way also, like, you're not wasting a bunch of time, because what if you pick a big contract that you want to submit for and you have to write, like a 20-page proposal, and you just spent all this time writing this and then you don't win and you're going to be discouraged, So I think it's better to go after smaller ones first, get 1 or 2 wins under your belt, and then be like, okay, I have some skin in the game now. I want to try and go after some of these bigger ones, and you have proof of concept.
The wins really help, because everybody's different with what they can manage. Because at the end of the day, whether the contract's $10 or $100 million, you still have to manage it.
Yeah.
There's no like Rosie the robot or some new robot who comes in and is like, okay, I'm going to do everything for you. It falls on us, the prime contractor. We are the ones responsible for making sure the work gets done, or the vendor has a certain clause in their insurance, or the vendor has a certain name tag on, or the vendor uses a certain entrance, or the vendor has certain ID. Like, these are all things that we have to do. And so regardless of the size, it's like, as long as you're cool or you have somebody on your team who's really amazing at project management, you'll excel.
Yeah, and I did want to mention something else as well. I'm a huge systems and processes person, and I love efficiency. So something that I use when I am reading through proposals, because most of them are in PDF format, I love artificial intelligence, like all the AI stuff that's out there. And so I use this add-on called Max AI. And what I do is like, that just sits like, because I use the Chrome browser, so that sits as like the add-on up there. And every time I download like a PDF, it opens in Max AI. To get through it faster, I like have like a little template that I created to feed to the AI, so I don't have to type it every time. But I'm like, basically what I want the AI to do is read through the document, and I want it to pull for me the all of the necessary details, the phone number, the name of the contracting officer, what the scope of work is, how long it's for, how to write the proposal. And so after I like feed it that question, it usually gives me all that information in less than a minute. And so I love it. So then I'm like, okay, now I have a quick idea of like if this is something that I want to tackle or not. Cause like I don't want to spend the next 20 minutes reading through a proposal and then realize, oh, this is too much for me. Now I can just use Max AI, and within a minute I know if this is something that I want to tackle. And then if it's something you want to add to your to-do pile, then it's still important for you to go and make sure that it is correct what the AI just fed you, but yeah. And then I still like to use ChatGPT on the side as well to help formulate like the bigger paragraphs, like if I need to talk about my approach to how I'm going to do something, So yeah, I love AI and using it. It's super helpful. So I highly recommend, using that in your processes.
I love that. And just so we're all clear, Max, like an X is an X-ray, M-A-X?
Yeah, M-A-X-A-I. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Cool. I love that. These are such great tools and techniques because a lot of people have asked about AI and how you can best use it. And I think everything that you are sharing is amazing because you won. Like you're not just sharing this to share it. Like these are things that you're doing it in addition to working full time. You've won, you're going to keep winning. So I am so grateful to you for sharing.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a great experience. And as far as other contracts, I'll probably still stick to the realm of grass mowing and landscaping because I really like the simplicity of it. And then, if any web design ones come up, I'll still submit for those probably. But I really like the landscaping.
I love that. And people are going to want to reach out to you. So how can people get in contact with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So they can find me. I do have my website for my business. It's like super simple, but I guess you can find me on social media through my name, Ayana McClintock, on Facebook. And then, if they wanted to email me, I'm trying to figure out the best way. Probably just Facebook, honestly. I answer all of my messages, so.
Yeah, and you're in the Facebook group, I believe.
I am in the Facebook group. So, if anybody, I can go in there and make a post after this and say, hey, this is me, after you post this, I can say this is me. If you have any questions, I love helping people. So.
Oh, I love that. I'm so grateful to you, Ayana, because this is going to help so many people. Because there are people out there that maybe they're waiting for their cage code, or maybe they just don't want to do federal and they just feel more comfortable with the state and local. So I'm just so grateful to you that you agreed to be interviewed.
Thank you. Well, also thank you for all of your knowledge and like everything that you're always sharing on your channel. I know that you're helping so many people out there, and we're thankful to have you as a mentor out here in this space as well.
Oh, thank you. It's the least I can do. It's the least I can do. And if everybody needs the book, winnerswaybook.com, check it out. But also, jokes aside, like this is my thing. Like this is what I'm meant to do, is to help and uplift and help with a limited financial abundance. So what I love is you took action. That's what's key. There's a lot of content out there, whether it's about cakes or hair or makeup or parenting or marriage or government contracting. It's all useless unless somebody applies it. And you applied it and you took action and then you won. And so I commend you, because this is not it. Like you're going to win more, and you're going to get to this point really soon where you're going to say, man, I think I can't work full time. And it's going to be a beautiful conundrum for you.
Yeah, I'm definitely, I always have that in my mind as well. Like I am definitely all about delegating. So like as soon as this starts, getting a little bit bigger, and then maybe I am managing a few contracts, like I have no issue like hiring a VA or somebody to help start managing this stuff for me, or even train a VA on how to like look through proposals, because I'm taking like a lot of business mentorships, and I just know that it's really important to work on your business and not in your business. So it's like the sooner that you can start delegating, the more that you can worry about higher level stuff and, getting bigger contracts. And also the reason why we all do this is so we can have more free time with our family and to like live life and travel. And, and I want to be like you, and I want to go live in Mexico, like... So that's my goal, is just to have more free time and escape the operating room.
Yeah, and you will. Absolutely will, because you won once, you know what it takes, and you won a proposal where you had to mail it in. That's not easy. Some people are like, I don't want to pay for postage.
Yeah, that was like $50 for like the 3-day service too.
Yeah, it's expensive. So I commend you. So thank you so much again for being here. Please connect. And as always, everything is possible. Until next time. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.